Hello and welcome to Thompson. My name is William Lebowski, and this past weekend I competed in the Majors 24 Hours of Le Mans, happening 1 week before the real Le Mans itself, which is a really special kind of feeling and atmosphere. Last year's Le Mans I competed in was, I don't think it was exactly the week before the race, but it was not close enough that you could get that feeling of like, oh, it's all happening at the same time. So the added immersion that you get from being a weekend before the real race really hypes you up. And as I sit recording this now, we are in between. It is Tuesday. It is Le Mans week, and so it's just that extra special excitement and immersion that leads to a cool racing experience. But here we have my first stint. I did a total of 3 stints. Racing, I think, for about, 10 stints, 10 fuel stints in total. Each stint of fuel lasted for 30 to 33 minutes. So you can do the math there. It's about 5 hours of racing. But it was a good time. Me and 3 teammates took on the Dallara P217 for the first time. And especially this is our first endurance race in iRacing. So we really jumped on the whole 24-hour of Le Mans. We went to the biggest thing first for our first 24-hour race, and this being my first stint, you can see I made some big mistakes. Here is one of them, probably my biggest or second biggest mistake of the entire race. Unfortunately, I did this more than once in the exact same spot, and I think this was a result of just not having practice in traffic enough. The thing that I will say about comparing my iRacing 24-hour Le Mans experience to my rFactor 2 24-hour Le Mans experience is the nice thing with rFactor 2 is you can throw a bunch of AI onto the track and not necessarily get a real representation of what the race is going to look like, but you get a very good spatial understanding of your car in traffic. Especially, you start at the back of a grid or the middle of a grid full of LMP2s. You make the AI skill level just to the point where you're easily in and out of traffic a bunch. Some cars faster than you, some cars slower than you, and it really gives you a nice perspective of where your car can and cannot fit. Speaking of can and cannot fit, I'm a little bit torn on what you just saw happen at Indianapolis. You would think that guy going so much slower and seeing me come down the inside would kind of yield his position, but he is not interested in giving me 14th position. So ultimately, in a 24-hour race or any endurance race, that is squarely lands on me. You don't expect people just to give you the line, and in fact, you prefer that they not just get off the racing line, because that creates a really inconsistent, unpredictable way of driving that causes more accidents than not. So that was my fault for going for a move that just wasn't going to perfectly be able to stick. And you can see I'm driving right behind P1 in class. We have 3 LMP2 cars in a row. 14th place in front, first place in the middle, and then me in 15th place right in the back of this action. And you can see that the patience that even though that guy is in first place and he's trying to hold off a field of like 22 LMP1 cars, that he is practicing patience. He's waiting for the long straight, entering the Porsche curves to make his pass. And that is, something that I, realize, okay, just got to be more patient. It's a long race. Let's not ruin anybody's race or our own race in our first stint. And so here we are. We're coming back up to this car to be able to make a move, and we've got more patience this time coming through, which is a big key when it comes to endurance racing. I am not one of the drivers who's going to have amazing qualifying pace. I never do, and you can see we're just barely going to miss out on the pass because we have to come in for our first fuel refill of the race. So yeah, just saying, I'm not the fastest guy in the field. I'm not the fastest guy on the team when it comes to qualifying or race pace, but the goal here is consistency, it's patience, and it's being able to be a person of high trust, not necessarily a person of high skill. I saw this video, it was like an Instagram reel, but I actually thought it to be pretty useful, and there was this guy talking about how Navy SEALs pick members to be on like the SEAL teams, and the whole gist of the video was they would rather pick someone with a high trust level and low skill level than pick someone with a high skill level and low trust level. So that's kind of the niche that I tried to hit. Speaking of hit, that was a stupid maneuver. I thought that I was going to be able to pull in just perfectly into the chicane there, and I think, with better experience, I would have. But alas, we lock up the rears and just go sliding into the wall, and you can see my frustration here. And you can also see cars. What I mean by cars not sticking to the racing line, this is split 10 of 11 or 12, so we're at the bottom of the field, and like I was saying earlier, not the fastest, and often the lower level splits mean lower skill levels, lower experience levels particularly, and well, me and the team have higher experience levels when it comes to endurance racing. We don't necessarily have the outright pace to be in higher groups where you get the naturally higher experience levels. So in the lower splits here, we could definitely see some instances of cars moving off racing line and going just kind of the wrong way around a track or around a pass, and it gets a little bit confusing, and I think you'll see that in and out of the clips that we are showing here. And again, we're going to see a lot of my mistakes. And for this first stint, and especially the race in general, I went from bad to good. My first stint started out bad. My second stint got a lot better. My third stint was I'm not going to say flawless, but there were so many less errors that I think we have the least amount of footage from stint 3. See, here you go. You see me make the same move, but this guy recovered much better, didn't send himself into the wall. But it wasn't, I wouldn't say the word was flawless, because that implies, perfection and speed and everything like that, but I made less mistakes, and so the things that we see in there are passes and faster laps. But here in this first stint, we're seeing a lot of mistakes, and I think it goes back to what I was saying about the difference between racing in R-Factor 2 versus racing doing this race in iRacing, is that I didn't have a perfect concept of my car in space coming into this race, and it kind of had to be learned mid-race, because with iRacing, there really is a less realistic, and I don't mean realistic in the sense of what people usually use the term realistic in sim racing. I mean realistic in terms of realism, in the sense of optimist versus realist. There isn't a realist way to get your practice in with other traffic in iRacing, unless you have the license to be able to compete in the I believe it was like the ESS Le Mans, where they were doing GTE and this Dallara P217 LMP2 car, and I didn't have the license to get that experience for that week leading up to this race, so I didn't have a perfect concept of my space, of spatial awareness, so to say, with this car, because like I had mentioned earlier, this is our first iRacing endurance race. We picked a big one for that. And I think as a team, we really, really enjoyed this experience. From everything from being in iRacing, which is just an amazing, amazingly well optimized experience for people who are trying to race simulated race cars. When you compare it to something like the multiplayer system in R-Factor 2, which is really clunky, it's not at all perfect, and whether or not we want to talk about the driving feel, the driving physics, and that side of the race. When it comes to just being a team and competing together, and the emphasis being, on competing, not just being together, R-Factor 2 doesn't necessarily hold a candle to what you can do in iRacing. And you can see this battle with the car in front of me ends here because we got to slow down, give them a second worth of track distance, track position, and so that kind of ended that battle prematurely. And here we are right before going back in for another fuel tank, and we just mess up going into our nage. A little bit of curb, a little bit too much brake, sends us flying, and I don't think that is the last time I made that mistake at Arnage. But alas, here we come in for another fuel tank, and just at this point, I'm really starting to feel much more connected in traffic with the car, and trying to make these stupid mistakes. I think I have a much better spatial awareness of what my car can and cannot do and where it can and cannot fit. But here we go, again, into our nage right away. Big mistake here, and it's going to cost us a little bit of position. We can see cars not in class go by. Boom, a little bit of contact. Didn't cause any sort of driving malfunctions, but there we go. Here's a P2. There's another P2 that gets by. So this first stint, full of mistakes, as we've seen. We've seen way more mistakes than we have good driving at this point in the race. And so I'm eager to make up for lost time. But again, my first stint is over. Here we have a little visit from Velo coming into the second stint. The second stint, I was more, I won't say I was more ready, more maybe focused is the right word, but this is several hours later, I think about 7 hours later, and we really settled in to the race more, both as a team and me individually. I actually had to go to work in between these two stints, and so I had a full shift of work, and so I just kind of had less to worry about coming into this, even though it was night. I was able to also get a couple laps of practice before my stint in the night, because you always just want to make sure that you're not going from day to night, having these huge changes, and jumping into the car, with a certain expectation, and then coming out of it, realizing that you've got to adjust your driving. And so here we are. You can see that my teammates in those 7 hours clawed back a lot of positions that, I don't want to, say it, but that I kind of lost for us through my mistakes at our nage and going into the chicanes and making contact with other cars. But here we go. We're fighting now for 12th position as we come out of the pits. We gave them the car in, 18th? So over those 7 hours, my teammates have really put in a solid job. A solid effort, and as you can see, we move up into 12th position, taking the position, and that guy falls back quickly, already a second and a half coming out of the chicane. So you got to assume that there's some kind of damage to that car. I don't think you lose time like that quickly. And there, just like that first fuel tank at night is over, and having not seen me crash the car, you can see that we've got a much better handle on the car itself. The field is starting to spread out a bit. As you can see, we left the pits just one position down, and now into 13th, and we get struck by an LMP1. In this race and we then get passed by a couple P2s, but as you can see, they were not on our lap, not fighting for position, but we do have some serious damage. We get a meatball flag. And we have to spend 4 minutes repairing after getting hit by that LMP1. And it would be real tempting to start complaining, to go into make a protest, file a protest against that car. But this is a one-off charity event. If this was a series where championship points are going and fighting throughout an entire series, that would be one thing. But, we're racing in the middle of the night at a 24-hour charity event. I didn't feel the need to submit a protest, and my teammates also kind of shared that same mentality. What would ultimately be the point of that? It was also a P1, if you remember. So it's not like it was a car in class who we were fighting for position. So I don't think that was a big deal in the long run. Yeah, it did cost us 3 minutes and a little bit of positioning, but again, it's a one-off charity event. And also, the teammates and I for this car did not come into this race with the expectation that we were going to win, that we're going to get a podium, we're going to fight for position. Our main goal here was a big trial of endurance racing in R Factor 2. How do we like it? How do we feel about it? How does it compare to what we've already done in R Factor 2? And so we really just wanted to build experience. Our team was sponsored by 3 different well, first of all, we had 3 different cars, and each car had a different sponsor, and each car kind of had different goals coming into the race, which was nice to be able to break down the team's entry across such a wide category of goals. Starting with our car, our goal being building experience, checking it out, and just kind of, I wouldn't necessarily just say just purely for fun. We do like to take these events seriously, but we know we're not going to be at the front of the field, so to say. Like I said, this is the 10th split of this event, and so we knew going into it we don't have the expectations of taking it incredibly seriously, being in the 10th split. We don't have any expectations of being a 10th split hero. The highest split that a car on our team went, it was split 5. Split 4 is where the broadcast starts. So it's as you can see that was a pretty solid split to be in, a pretty fast split. And they had different intentions with their race. They had intentions of podiums, of intentions of winning, had intentions of getting into the live stream, which was just not the goal that we had, and it would have been an unrealistic expectation and an unrealistic goal to set for ourselves to do that. And so that was kind of the point of our car. And we're always, and the people in our car, we're always looking to build skill sets, to build experience, and that's really what was happening here: building skill sets, building experience, to go on and eventually be in those positions, fighting for podiums, fighting for higher splits. But where we stand now, we're in a transitionary kind of movement to kind of see where we're going to race for the rest of the year. And I think the team is kind of set on, we'll stick to our GTE stuff for R Factor 2, because in that class it's kind of where our pace is at. And when it comes to iRacing, especially the bigger events where we can have more splits and have a more accurate placement, that's where we'll do our P2 racing. And as you can see, the sun is starting to come up. Here was our fastest lap, by the way, of our entire race, of 3:33, right before we have to come in, get a new tank of fuel. So yeah, the sun's starting to come up. The European guys are starting to wake up. It is about, morning for them, as it took place in the Le Mans time zone. So those guys in the UK had a little bit more of a realistic time slot in terms of what the race looked like and what it looked like outside for them, as opposed to me, who was at 11 p.m. I think is when the sun started to rise. And here we have our final split, and we're a little bit dialed in now. We're up to P11. And you can see that we already went into the pits for our first tank of fuel with nothing to report. But as you can see, we get a slowdown here, and this was kind of the theme for me, especially in this third stint, was I got a lot of slowdown penalties. And I don't necessarily think they hampered our position, but granted, we probably gave up, I probably gave up somewhere in the field of 40 seconds to a minute, maybe, with all these slowdown penalties. And, that does add up, but when, the cars are not necessarily, there was a point in this race in about this time where the nearest car behind us was a lap down, and the nearest car ahead of us was a lap ahead. So, when we're talking about lap times at Le Mans, in the 3:30s, a minute isn't necessarily a huge impact, where a minute at another track is sometimes a lap. Sometimes that'll put you a lap down, and so it's interesting. You have a little bit more wiggle room here at Le Mans. And of course, at the end of a 24-hour race, you have a lot more. The cars get spread out as everybody gets on different pit stop strategies, and different things happen to different drivers and different cars over time. So yeah, here we go. And again, we have a real erratic P1 behind us as we're coming to the end of our second fuel tank. And it was just a bit strange to see cars being so in and out of lines here. Like, this guy, was he giving me position? Was he holding the inside and trying to battle me? He did back out, so you would assume that he was just trying to get out of my way, but it wasn't necessarily consistent. And so it's it's the morning of a 24-hour race. I think at this point in time there are 6 hours left, so people are getting tired. It's that kind of stuff is happening more frequently, but it's just kind of a frustration because it's harder to predict where cars are going to be and where you need to place your car when cars are moving like that. And so that combining with being at the end of the race, it can a little setback like that where you're not even necessarily losing time. It's just a frustration that can get in your head and stay there. You gotta be able to let it go. And so I think that was one of the better lessons that I learned coming through this race as the race progressed, was that there are just some things you got to let go and not get upset by. And and oftentimes you make a mistake, and especially in an endurance race, it's like, great, now move on, have the memory of a goldfish. There's no point in holding on to this error, to this mistake, and especially like this guy is a lap down. I believe I remember seeing him in 21st position, but he's racing every LMP2 that comes by him. He's just trying to race everyone that comes by, whether a lap ahead of him, laps down from him, on his lap. And it's just a frustrating experience. And it's something that can take you off your game, allow you to make mistakes, allow you to put yourself in a position where you're putting your race in a vulnerable position. And so I was even talking with my teammate, actually. I had a teammate on at this point, and he was saying, yeah, this guy's was doing it to me. Just either let him by or get to the point where you can get by him, and just don't spend any mind on him. Don't worry about him. And you can see, like, going into the Porsche curves here, he knocks me off my line here, sets himself up for puts himself on a not optimal line position to go through here and to knock myself off a line, just for what? There's no reason, and that's a byproduct of just being in the lower split. And I also think being in a lower split, and that guy is down in last. He's fighting for last place in this race at the bottom of a split. It's just maybe they've spent the entire race, they make a huge mistake at the beginning. They're spending, crashing their car a bunch even throughout the middle of the race. And so now they're just trying to get any kind of race experience because they spent their whole race in the pit stops or, lapping alone. And so that can be a frustration. It can be a huge frustration at the end of the race. But I give my teammate the car in 10th position. I'm feeling really good about that. I feel like I was able to make up for the mistakes that I made at the beginning of this race. For example, we saw a lot of footage of me crashing and making mistakes in the first stint, and not so much as the race went on. But this was a little heartbreaking to see. You can see the smile on my face kind of melt a little bit. Giving the team the car in 10th position and then seeing it crashed instantly like that. And unfortunately, the race did not end well for us. I gave the team the car in 10th position, and they ended up having lots of mistakes themselves. And unfortunately, I believe we brought the car home in 18th out of 22. So 8 positions lost in the next about 5 hours of racing while I was asleep in bed, and a little bit disheartening. But it was also really, really nice to know that I was able to tighten up my performance, improve it, and kind of do the best that I could do. At the same time as learning something new. But thank you guys for watching. I do appreciate it. That was my 24-hour Le Mans for the year, more than likely. It's just a great racing tradition. Always going to be having a 24-hour Le Mans race on the schedule, particularly in the summer. But thank you guys for watching. I do appreciate it, and we'll see you in the next one.